We're live. Hello, my friend, and welcome back to the podcast. The first thing that I want to name before I say anything else is this is now the Speak Her Language podcast. I decided to shift away from Happiness Looks Good on You and change the direction, change the focus, change the theme of the podcast to something more aligned with intuitive living, with feminine energy, with feminine embodiment, with learning how to speak the language of your body through your cycle, through feminine embodiment, through all things feminine energy. That's going to be the focus of this podcast moving forward. And I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to shift in this direction in my business, in the podcast. It's been something that I've been feeling myself more drawn to talk about lately, and making this shift energetically is helping support those desires. So I will reframe the intro for the formality. Hello, my friends, and welcome to Speak Her Language. I hope that you're having a great week. I am currently sitting in what I'm calling the office at Brian's apartment in Pinehurst, North Carolina. We have been in the midst of getting settled after getting back from living in the bus. We still have stuff spread everywhere. We still have stuff in the bus. We still have stuff in Brian's parents' house in Pinehurst. We have more of our stuff, his parents' house in Greensboro, North Carolina. We had some of our stuff here in the apartment in Pinehurst. We now have more because I just packed up his mom's car and brought stuff down from their house to his apartment. So we're a little of all over the place right now, and I've been feeling the effects of it. I felt very spread out. I've said this in a few different ways or in a few different places, but we have stuff everywhere. And when we go to reach for something that we need, like socks or underwear or clothes or leggings or shoes, we go to reach for it and we don't know where to find it. And that has been adding an extra layer of strain, an extra layer of discomfort to this period of adjustment, getting back into the flow of things and more of like a normal life outside of the bus, we'll say. And so it has been an adjustment, and it's so funny how living intuitively just as a lifestyle, an intuitive lifestyle, sets you up for things like this, because I think that I could sense that this period was going to take a longer transition than I allow for. And that's actually something I want to speak on a little more in a moment. But when we were ending the trip, like the last couple of days, or maybe even the weeks leading up until, I can't quite remember when this happened, but there was a point where I was talking to Brian, or maybe just talking to myself in my mind, and I was just saying, I want to give myself through the end of the year to adjust, to recalibrate, because, and I didn't know it at the time, but what I know now is that this transition is taking a lot longer, because it's not as simple as we get back into North Carolina from living in the bus for a year, poof, we're back in our normal flow, right? Because Brian's apartment is where he was living before we moved into the bus. I was living in the bus before he moved into the bus. And so he had his home set up here. When I got back from remodeling the bus last year in September, before we took off on our big trip in November, I basically kind of moved in with him into his apartment. I didn't fully move out of the bus, but I brought all of the stuff that I used pretty frequently, which is what I do when I would stop at someone's house for an extended period of time. I would just bring the stuff that I need out of the bus and live that way. And so I was living with him in his apartment, and we were doing life that way. We were back and forth between his parents' house in Greensboro just to visit them and hang out with them. And we spent most of our time here in Pinehurst. When we decided that he was going to move into the bus with me and that we were going to leave in November, we started the process of moving his stuff that he was going to take with him out of his apartment into the bus. And then when we left for that trip around Thanksgiving, he moved all of his stuff out of his apartment because the decision was that his parents were going to rent this apartment out while we were traveling. Now, the reason we decided that was, of course, because Brian and I had just started dating. We didn't know if living in a 90 square foot area or in a school bus was going to work, if it was going to be good, if we were going to stay together. We didn't know if we were going to like each other. There was a lot unknown. So he didn't want to get rid of the apartment. His parents own the apartment. So it was it felt like an easy decision to just rent it out while we were traveling. So I'm going to pause for a second. I need to. So we made the decision to just rent out his apartment while we were traveling. We were not getting that income. His parents were receiving that rent, but it was great. That way the apartment wouldn't be empty. We wouldn't have to keep paying rent while we were traveling. His parents could benefit from it. It was a no-brainer. So everything was moved out of his apartment, and it was set up for essentially short-term rentals. So think of it as like an Airbnb. So when we got back, all of our stuff was just piled in Brian's room at his parents' house, and also obviously the stuff that we had in the bus. And we had to move all of the stuff from his parents' house back into his apartment and like reset it up as a home. Now, the furniture was still here, all of that stuff was still here, but like everything that we use daily and all of his clothes and all of the stuff that he kept here wasn't here. So when we got back from traveling in the bus, we then had to move all of the stuff out of the bus into his apartment, which we haven't even done yet. We had to move all of his stuff from his parents' house into his apartment, which we are like just now finishing. But also too, with that, we spent a week down in Florida at my parents' house. I was at my retreat for a week in Mexico. Brian had a wedding to attend. Brian also started his new job caddying in Aiken, which is 3.5 hours away from both Greensboro and Pinehurst. And there was a lot going on. So we haven't really had just this fixed amount of downtime to move, get settled, get packed. So when I say that out loud, when I'm like, oh, we've been back, from living in the bus for a month, and we're just now starting to get moved into the apartment, it feels like that should have happened by now. But the reality of it was we were exhausted. We didn't want to rush into this process. We didn't want to exert all of this energy right when we got back from being in the bus to just frantically get moved and shuffled around. While that probably would have helped us in the long run, expending that energy in that way just felt awful. It did not feel like a good idea. So we decided not to rush into moving back into the apartment. The only issue with that is once Brian started working, and he actually got asked to work full time, which is incredible. We're really excited about that. But with it being 3.5 hours away, he can't just go to work for the day and then come home. So when he goes to work, he goes and stays in Aiken. And his first stint, he was there for 7 days. He took the bus down to Aiken, so it was great. It worked out really well. But we weren't able to collaborate on getting stuff moved. So right now, Brian is in Kentucky at a wedding. He worked, like I said, 7 or 8 days straight. So he drove up to Kentucky, and he's just like having a good, fun, relaxing weekend. He went to a wedding with all of his college friends. He's playing golf today. He's having a great weekend. And because I have been doing a lot of nothing, obviously I hosted my retreat, and that was amazing. And I got to relax the week before that. But this period of time now, while he's in Kentucky and the last couple of days that he was working, I had just been relaxing. I've been decompressing, which he is totally on board with giving me that time and that space. I am on board with giving myself that time and that space, but it made a lot of sense for me to kind of pick up, I don't want to say the slack, but take on the responsibility of moving us back into Pinehurst. So all of that was to say that's kind of what's been going on over the last few weeks. And I think the reason that it hasn't been exhausting, because keep in mind, that was all in a month, right? My retreat, a week down in Florida, which was a 9-hour drive, him going to Kentucky, us moving everything back into his apartment. That's a lot. And I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but we as a society have normalized doing all of that stuff at such a fast pace that to some, that taking a month may seem like that took forever. For some, that taking a month, for me, it taking a month felt like the exact right amount of time. But this leads into the topic of today's podcast of the art of living slowly, right? Now, back to what I started speaking about was that I knew that this period of time, that this season from when we got back in the bus to the end of December, really, that all was going, I wanted that all to take a while. I didn't want to rush any of that process, because living in the bus just showed me the value of allowing space in life, allowing empty space, not filling every single moment of your days and weeks and months with stuff. Just allowing yourself room to navigate through different seasons of life and what's coming up in life. And so I shared all of that about, the last month or so of what Brian and I have been up to and what's been going on in our life, because there was a version of me in the past. Again, I can't really remember. If I looked through all of my, journals and maybe my videos and things that I've posted, I could probably pinpoint the date where this decision to give myself through the end of the year came up. But in that moment, it's like I knew that this period of time was going to take longer than I anticipated. And I'm so freaking glad that I made that claim, a month and a half ago, because I have been constantly going back to that decision to give myself through the end of the year to just be. And what I mean by that is, when we've gotten back into his parents' house and I was there by myself and I had time to just flow and to just give myself space and time to do the things that I've been wanting to do, like make candles or sew or just sit and not do shit, I would start spinning out a little in my head, right? I would get in my thoughts of, I'm not doing anything to make an income. And of course, this overarching theme of this last year has been making an income, because right now I do not have an income and I have bills to pay. I want to contribute to the life that Brian and I are building. I don't want to just live off of the money that he's making. While that is certainly something that we've talked about and that we're doing it, there's something inside of me that obviously wants to contribute financially to our relationship. And so that has been the motivation for so much that I've been doing. And when I say motivation, I don't necessarily mean that in a positive light. I mean, what is nagging in the back of my mind? You need to make an income. You need to make money. You need to do something to produce an income. Like, that voice is in the depths of my mind, just spinning me out sometimes. So when I would be relaxing, when I would be just vegging out, or even doing things that are productive, doing them in a way that feels good, that feels in flow, that voice in the back of my mind saying, you need to make money, you should be making an income, you should be doing more, you should be bringing more in, it spins me out a lot of times. And when I would get in those spun out stages, I would be like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, and I get a little scattered. I would always come back to that decision that I made to give myself through the end of the year before putting pressure on myself to make money. That was the kind of official claim that I made whenever it was that I made it, was that I wasn't going to stress out about not making money for the rest of the year. Now, what I mean by that is, I know myself well enough to know that I do spin out like that. I get caught up in my head. I get lost in the sauce sometimes, and I know that about myself. And so I gave myself through the end of December to just integrate back into the apartment, get moved back into the apartment, get myself set up, get a space set up that I could comfortably flow and do the things that I want to do that I hope will start bringing in an income. And also, I know myself well enough to know that it takes me time to work through the ideas, to work through what it is that I want to bring to life, what it is that I want to create, what it is that I want to do. And giving myself these 2 months, November and December, to just figure all of that out gives me so much space to go through my process, to go through the art of really creating and launching my business. It actually feels like I'm finally just now starting to launch my business, but giving myself this time to really settle into what my desires are and to do it in a feminine way, to not rush it, to not put pressure on it, to not structure it, to not try to fit myself into a box that will ultimately steer me in a direction that I don't want to go. I've given myself the freedom, and I've just given myself permission to do it in the way that feels best. And that has looked chaotic as shit from the outside. But there is so much intention behind the way that I'm doing what I'm doing. It feels so good to me. So all of that is to basically say thank you to past me for making that energetic claim to give myself through the end of the year to figure all of this shit out, to get moved into the apartment, to get this space that I'm looking at right now, time to come together and come together in a way that is going to feel so good that it is going to propel me in the new year to really start working towards that, working towards satiating that voice in the back of my head that says, you need to make money, you need to make an income. And I'm not always able to silence or quiet that voice. And so, like I said earlier, when I do spin out, I remind myself of that space that I'm giving myself. And so I got a little ahead of myself, a little over my skis there, because that's really a lot of the meat that I want to share in today's episode. But I think that background hopefully will be helpful. And just talking through my process with it, sharing it, it actually helps me a lot too, because I have been kind of going through it with Instagram lately. I've felt really icky on Instagram. It's not feeling good. And when I go on and share and talk about these things, I share parts of the story in such a short form explanation of what it is that I'm working through or going through. And it feels like when I go on Instagram, it feels like I'm nagging. It feels like I'm complaining. It feels like I'm not able to express the entirety of the story or the situation or what's going on. And I don't feel like the message that I'm intending to share is coming across. That may not be the case, but that's how it feels inside. So I'm really excited to share that something came up for me over the last month or so that I've been feeling the pull to do, that I've decided to do. And that is to start a YouTube channel. Now, starting a YouTube channel is not to be an influencer. It's not because I feel like my life is some great thing that I want to broadcast to the world. But what this is going to allow for me to do in conjunction with this podcast is share more of the whole story. Because in the essence of living slowly, that also extends, for me at least, to not trying to cram an entire story into a 60-second clip. And I mean that literally, but I also mean that theoretically, because the art of living slowly is allowing things to take the time that they take, allowing things and finding joy in and giving space for things to take however long they take. And that is the essence of how I've been living my life. And it wasn't until speaking those words out loud right now that I really was able to put it into a clear picture like that. And I think a lot of the resistance on Instagram for me has been because I'm trying to cram this big, beautiful thing that I'm experiencing that I feel like others probably experience and could maybe feel a little less alone if they knew someone else was experiencing it, into this little compact, packaged, proper thing to serve up on the internet. And it doesn't do it justice. It doesn't do the experience justice. It doesn't paint the full picture. And I think that is exactly why I'm feeling so disconnected from Instagram. And it's exactly why I felt pulled to create a YouTube channel, to incorporate it into this podcast so that the story can be captured, at least captured a little more, right? And captured in a way that is raw, and a way that is honest, and in a way that is just very much life. And I get torn with that sometimes on Instagram. I want Instagram to be aesthetic. I want that to be a place that is, it's just fun to represent yourself in a way that is aesthetic. But there is this deep yearning in my soul to be so fucking raw and to be so honest and transparent about everything that I can't do both of those on Instagram. I can't make it aesthetic and be authentic. I can't make it pretty and be raw. I can't make it visually pleasing and be so brutally transparent. And I've been trying to do that for a while and it hasn't been working, and it makes me feel resistant. It makes me feel like I'm spinning my wheels. So I'm really excited to announce that I'm starting a YouTube channel and that I will be posting the recording of these podcasts on this channel as well. The channel is also called Speak Her Language, and I am actually recording this right now. It's still really strange. I haven't quite gotten accustomed to speaking into the microphone and looking at the camera. So it's going to be a fun experience. So if you're listening, if you're used to tuning in to this podcast through Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to your podcasts, this will also be posted on YouTube. So if you like watching along, there may not be a ton of exciting visuals, even though I do plan on incorporating different videos and things overlapping on this. But if you want to watch along, if you really enjoy consuming things in that way, you can go check this out on YouTube. I'll have the link in the show notes. So that is something I'm really excited about moving into. And the way that this is going to work, at least what I think of for now, the way that I'm being pulled for it to go in a way that really excites me, is by kind of filming it vlog style, just the raw lifestyle, what is leading me to certain downloads, what's bringing me to certain realizations, what is the inspiration or the lessons that I'm learning that are bringing me to different seasons of life. I want to capture that. And so the way I see this going right now, this could change, but I'm going to record a video of life and of things that I'm working through, because I am also a self-projected projector. I think I did an episode on my human design awakening a while back, and I'm going to just stop and talk for a second about this, because being a self-projected projector essentially means that I find my truth in speaking. I find my truth. I make sense of things. I reach my decisions in actually speaking things out loud. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that, because some of us just can't process things in our brain the same way that others can. And it's really beneficial to speak them out loud, even if I'm not speaking to anyone. It is really helpful for me to bounce my thoughts verbally off of someone else, and Brian is such a good sounding board for me in that way. But I also find that by simply talking, I found a lot of validation in that through this podcast over the last year. Just sharing my thoughts, speaking them out loud, I have reached so many epiphanies just from actually using my voice and talking and speaking the thoughts in my mind out loud. A lot of episodes where those profound realizations have happened, I haven't even published, but it's helpful for me. And so I am a self-projected projector, and working through the things that I'm moving through in life, in business, in my relationship, in just, life, I want to capture those. And it's fun for a couple of reasons, because it allows me to feel like when I'm doing the not so glamorous things, like unpacking the car this morning to move our stuff into Pinehurst, I just got footage of it. I filmed some of it, and it makes me feel like, okay, this part might be a little shitty. It's not the most fun thing that I've ever done, but it's going to allow me to tie it into the bigger story of what I'm trying to share. And it gives me a fun little creative outlet in the things that are otherwise not fun and creative. So I will link the YouTube video in the show notes and kind of continue on talking about this conversation. So each episode, at least I hope, will be recorded as well. There very well may be some episodes that don't get published as a video, but I'm going to do my very best to keep this up because I really enjoy it. And I'm really excited to share the progress of how this office comes together. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll see that there is a bed to my left, and I'm in just a pretty blank room. And I shared in the video that will be published with this podcast. They're going to be in separate videos. So I've got like the vlog style video, and then I'll have this episode as its own. You'll see in that video, I kind of went through the process of mapping out what this office is going to look like and talking through my vision for it. Right now, it's very raw. I still have a random bed leaning up against the wall, which looks pretty silly. But I share in that video what my vision for this office is going to be. So I'm really excited to like share the progress of that too, because I can't remember now which video I said this in, but part of my desire for starting this YouTube channel is to demonstrate and show my process for figuring shit out. One of the biggest questions I get about the bus is, did you know what you were doing before you started it? Fuck no. I don't know where it comes from in my body, if it's just how I was raised or my childhood or whatever, but I just know that you can figure shit out. You can figure anything out. You can do anything. You can make anything you want. And so part of my desire with this YouTube channel, and even bringing light to it in this podcast, is just showing how simple it can be. And I think this was in the last video, but I shared that it's so integrated into my life, just making things happen, making things work, making something out of nothing, building things, creating things, just allowing life to flow and move with you and turning it into what you want is so integrated in my life. And it's such a part of my nature that I don't even talk about it. And it's something that I want to start talking about more, because you can make your life any fucking thing that you want. 2 years ago, I was working a full-time job that was draining the life out of me day by day. And now I just traveled the country in a self-converted school bus for the last year. I met my soul mate. I'm building my dream business that will eventually turn into something that allows me to continue doing what I love doing and living the life I love living. And 5 years ago, I had no fucking idea that that was possible. And it just happens because I just know that I can figure things out along the way. And so, getting a little derailed from the topic of this podcast episode, but I all think that this is relevant and it's really important, because the other part of it is finding the joy in that part of it, in that process of it. The in-between parts of you making the decision that you want to change your life and then being in the life that you desired, that you want to live, the dream version of it, the ideal version of it, the most beautiful version of it. There is a gap between those 2 points, right? You making the decision to do it, and there's even like checkpoints along the way, making the decision that you want to do it, figuring out what it is that you actually want, and then being in the life that you actually want. And they're separate from one another. And this gap in between can be so many things. It can be a really shitty experience. It can be a hard experience. It can be so intimidating that you don't ever actually make the decision to change and you stay in the life that you don't want. And so I hope to shed light on the joy and the fun and the magic that happens in this in-between to make it less scary, so that if you feel inspired to change your life, you feel a little bit more hopeful that you can actually do it, because you fucking can. Anybody can, right? And so finding the joy in that process and not rushing that process, allowing that process to just be slow and full of ease and full of fun. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And it's I feel like I don't want to say I've mastered that, but I've gotten so good at just finding the beauty in the in-between and in the process. And this episode, The Art of Living Slowly, is going to talk about that. And I'm going to share a couple of things that I just want to talk about. I don't really think they're tips to living more slowly, which I will have something on that at the end of this episode. But things that I have learned that I do and that I'm not afraid to do that allow me to keep that slow pace, that allow me to keep things at a rhythm that feels comfortable and that feels aligned for me. And the first thing that I want to bring up is the power of the pause. Stopping what the fuck you're doing. And what I mean by a pause, I quite literally mean like, just like you would hit play or pause on Netflix because you want to get up and make a drink, hit pause on your life. In what ways can you hit the pause button and just freeze things in your life? I realize for a lot of us that that's not as easy said or easily done as it is. What is the expression? Easier said than done. It's not as simple as that, right? Because you have a job, you have to make money. Bills don't pause. Commitments don't pause, all of that. I understand that. My entire life, the last 3 years, has been me hitting pause where I can. And what that's turned into is me creating a slow life. And it's so good. Like, I was telling this to the girls at the retreat that my days, it feels like I have 14 days in a week now, because like sometimes my morning and my night feel like 2 entirely different days. And that has came to be because I have not been afraid to pause things. And this does a couple of different things for you, right? When you hit pause, and I'll talk a little bit more in a minute on what exactly I mean by hitting pause in a really practical sense, because theoretically that sounds great, but what does that actually mean in my life? I hear that question and I will answer it in just a second. But when you pause, you allow yourself an opportunity to evaluate what is going well, what you don't like, what you do like. And in that period where things have slowed down even a little bit more, you give yourself space to catch up on the feeling. You give yourself an opportunity to just be where you are. And it's more than just presence. It's more than, I'm not saying just be grateful where you are. That's not what I'm saying, but it allows you an opportunity to really plant your feet in the moment. And when you are in the moment, we're going to talk quantum physics for a second. When you are in the moment, when you are not thinking and planning on the next thing or trying to just keep the things that are already going in your life going, when you can pause, you're in the moment. And when you're in the moment, anything is possible. If you were to reach out into the quantum field, and there are a lot of books you can read on this, if you were to reach out into the quantum field and just look around, anything that you want in your life is possible. Anything that you don't want in your life is possible. Literally, infinite possibilities exist in the quantum field. But when we make a decision, when we make a plan, when we intentionally move forward in a certain direction, we eliminate 99% of those possibilities. So when we pause, when we really sink into the moment, we are opening ourselves up to the magic of infinite possibilities. And while that action alone is not enough to completely and radically change your life, pairing that with a lot of the other work that comes of just really syncing up with your inner magnetism, really syncing up with your vision that you want for your life, really working on what it is that you feel worthy of and what it is that you feel like you deserve, and a lot of this other inner work. And there's a lot of parts to it, right? But this one simple thing of pausing, it opens you up to that quantum field where infinite possibilities exist, right? And again, that alone isn't going to change your life. But what it can do is when you open up yourself to these infinite possibilities, you are reminded of them. If I were bustling through my day, I've got this tomorrow, I have to take this, that place, I have to go to the post office, I have to do this, I have to do that. All of these things for the future are bogging me down. They're clouding my mind. But if I can just say, I'm going to pause for an hour, I'm going to sit for an hour and just allow myself to be, it opens my heart and my mind up to a lot of things. It's probably going to open the floodgates to a lot of things that you should be doing and you could be doing. And there is an art to this. It's not something that I would expect yourself to be able to do at the drop of a hat. It has taken a lot of work clearing out expectations and eliminating expectations and allowing myself to sit in the stillness. But when you do, and you open yourself up to the infinite possibilities, you allow yourself to play in it a little bit. And this is where you can start pulling in your imagination. This is when you can really start asking yourself, what in my life right now is supporting me? What is serving me? What is not serving me? What is not supporting me? It allows you to evaluate. When you're so busy going, you don't have this opportunity to look around and evaluate. And you don't have to go play in the quantum field or even give a shit about the quantum field or infinite possibilities to evaluate what is and isn't serving you in your life. And even when you do this, when you take this evaluation, when you take a look at your life and you say, is this job fulfilling me? Is my current schedule fulfilling me? Is what I'm doing during my days fulfilling me? Is the time that I spend in the morning drinking my coffee fulfilling me? Like whatever it is that you're looking at, when you're taking your evaluation of that, you don't even have to change it right away. And that's an invitation that I want you to take to heart, because it can be really overwhelming to sit and evaluate your life and take note of all of the shit that you realize that you actually don't want in your life. And the next step being like, okay, let's change it all. That is so overwhelming and it's not fun for anybody, right? So you don't have to take any action on it, but simply becoming aware of what does and doesn't serve you will help you moving forward. It will allow you to maybe pull your energy back just a little bit from the things that are no longer serving you. It will allow you to funnel more of your energy into the things that are serving you. Right? And that action alone will help this process, will aid in this process of slowing down your life overall, just from taking a moment to pause. Now, let's talk about what the pause looks like, because it can be a lot of different things. And please do not limit your imagination to the things that I'm speaking to in ways to pause or to evaluate your life, because that is like my limited creativity right now, coming up with suggestions and ideas. But what the pause can look like, it can look like a literal pause during your day. If you're really tuning in to this rushed energy that you have, and that's where it started for me, was these moments where I'm like going to do something in a hurry that could wait. I started just noticing when I was doing that, and I would put it down. For example, for me, I remember one time specifically, we had a tea time. We were going to play golf. We were in Gamble Sands, and I was like, oh, I have this idea for a reel I want to post. I have to do it right now. And we were like running out of the door to go play golf. And I was like, why am I rushing? Like I felt myself like typing really fast, editing really fast, doing all of this really fast. And I was like, why am I feeding into this energy right now? This reel can fucking wait. And by feeding into that rushed energy, I'm taking that rushed energy into an activity that is supposed to be relaxing and fun and enjoyable. And I've noticed in the past that when I would take that rushed energy, whatever it looked like, it wasn't always creating a reel, but whatever it looked like, I would take that rushed energy into my next activity and then into my next activity, because it would almost always inevitably require me to rush from one thing to the next. And there are a lot of practical ways that you can back away from this rushed energy. I'll get to that a little later. But allowing yourself to really tune into those moments when you feel yourself rushing. Ask yourself, is what you're rushing towards something that you actually have to rush towards right now? Is there anything in this moment that you can do later or do at a later time? Does what you're rushing towards need your attention in this way right now? If the answer is yes, then move forward. Just note it. Notice when you're doing it, and maybe figure out ways in the future to give yourself more time and space before this event, if it's something that's recurring. Because sometimes we just wake up late, right? Like sometimes we just have to rush. It's just the reality of it. But this is more of a practice to embody and an awareness to start creating in your life. It's not a one and done type of scenario. It is a living, breathing embodiment practice of noticing and observing that rushed energy. So when you're in that moment, if you do notice that rushed energy, and if you ask yourself the question of, is what I'm rushing towards right now absolutely necessary? Is this something that needs my attention right now? If your answer is yes, move forward, notice it, move on. If your answer is no, just drop it. Allow whatever the thing that you were trying to do that you were rushing towards, be free. Free yourself from the expectation of getting it done or going or whatever. And then whatever it was that was in the background causing you to rush. So in my example of, posting the reel, rushing to post the reel before playing golf, I dropped the expectation to post the reel. I let go of posting the fucking reel because it wasn't important. I let that go. And then I sat myself and I immediately felt that rushed energy leave my body. And then I went and I played golf and I did so. And it was the most enjoyable day of golf we've had in a really long time. We had so much fun. I had such a good day. I was in such a high energetic vibration that it was truly probably one of the most fun rounds of golf that I ever played. And I played really, really well, but that's here nor there. So whatever it looks like, and it's really hard to give really specific examples because these are going to be so intimately connected to whatever the situation that you're in. But identify what it is that you're rushing for, why you're rushing. Ask yourself if it's really that important, and allow yourself to drop the expectation, to drop the activity, and then move on to the next thing in a slower, more relaxed pace. So the power of the pause is incredible. And another ways you can pause, if there are energetic commitments that are draining you in your life, put them on pause, literally, just like you would pause a subscription. Think of it as pausing subscriptions in your life, right? It literally pause subscriptions in your life if that's something that you feel aligned with. I know at one point, it was earlier this year, I was going through some energetics with money, and I went through and I paused or canceled every subscription that I could and didn't need, right? Relationships, if there is a relationship that is draining your energy and that you're noticing that is just not lifting you up or making you feel expansive, separate, create some space in between you and that person. You don't always have to notify them of this boundary you're setting, but create some space there. If your job is draining you, if that's a source of feeling rushed and feeling chaotic, which that was the case for me when I was working my 9-to-5 job. It was the nature of the job, right? It wasn't that the job was particularly stressful, but we were just always planning for the next and the next and the next. If that's the case, if your job is a source of this rushed energy, take some fucking PTO. Call in sick. You don't have to be sick to call in sick. I said it. So take a day, claim your energetic pause by calling into work sick. And if you're a woman and you have your cycle, I highly encourage you to do this on a day when you start your period. But that's a whole other conversation. So just whatever a pause looks like, you will know. If you just allow yourself to drop into what you're feeling, it will be clear what this pause can look like for you and where you can apply it in your life without your life going up in flames. And I promise you it won't. Right? I think something that you will find from pausing more is that your life will continue going, and it will continue going in a way that's really fun, and nothing's going to explode. Nothing's going to blow up in your face. Nothing's going to catch on fire. Just start incorporating more pauses where you can. And the next thing, it's kind of the next step, maybe after the pause, is the pivot. Allow yourself to change. Allow yourself to change things when they are no longer serving you. So back to that conversation we were having just a second ago on when you start to take inventory and evaluate your life of things that are and are no longer serving you, don't feel the need to change them right away, but don't hold yourself back from changing them either. If you feel called to step away from something, do it. There is a reason you feel called for it. Okay, if that's relationships, if that's a job, if that's friendships, if that's a fitness class that you're going to that you feel obligated to go to for some reason and just don't feel good when you're there, allow yourself to change the direction of where your life is going through these smaller pivots, right? And pivoting is something that, oh my God, I feel like I do it too much, but there is no such thing, right? I'm in the process, like this last year has been the discovery phase. I'm claiming it as the discovery phase of my business, of what I want my business to be, of what I want it to look like, of how I want it to feel. And that has meant that I have changed my mind so many times. The amount of times, again, like I'm in the coaching world, the amount of times that I have launched an offer and then backed up on it, countless. The amount of times that I have decided on the name for something and then changed it, hello, this podcast, I allow myself to change. And there is a weird stigma, and I question myself on it sometimes a lot. There's a weird stigma that it creates this inconsistency, and that consistency is the only way to be successful. And sure, that's maybe true for some people, but I don't find that to be true for me. I find that when I try to stay consistent, it keeps me stuck because maybe I'm on this fast track for growth and evolution and change, but I really think that it's just my natural flow. And I think it's a lot of people's natural flow to want to change things when they're not feeling right? We see it a lot in the corporate world. If you move jobs too much, it's going to look bad. Well, here's a quick tip on that. You don't have to put shit on your resume if you don't want to. Again, a different conversation for a different day, but allowing yourself to change when you feel pulled is not a bad thing. In fact, I think that allowing myself to change and pivot when I felt pulled is why I am on a fast track for evolution and growth and enlightenment and finding this beautiful life that I'm actively creating right now and actually getting to the point where I feel like I'm living it in the way that I have it pictured in my mind. So something else that I want to say, and then I'm going to wrap up this episode, is I've spoke on some resistance to Instagram earlier, and I think part of that has to do with that point that I just brought up, because I actively change so much and I do it very visibly. I allow myself to be very visible in my process and in what I'm working through and in what I'm going through. And that, I don't really know why I feel the need to share as much as I do. And I actually, compared to what's actually going on in my life, I don't share that much of the process or of the flow or of the change or of the decisions or of the thoughts that are going on. But I allow myself to change on Instagram as often as I can. I have changed my bio a million times. I've changed my name a million times. It feels like all of the things that they recommend not to do, I'm doing. And when I say they, I mean the people who are guiding in the business side of things, in, the entrepreneurial space, the people that are business coaches, the people that have best practices to building and growing a business and building and growing on Instagram and all of this shit. If I'm being honest, I don't give a fuck about that stuff. I don't want to have a big following. I don't like the idea of it. I barely am able to respond to Instagram messages and text messages as it is. I do not want a big following. What I do want is a business that helps people. And I don't think that I need all of the things that they are saying that I need in order to do that. And so because of that, I just allow myself to change as I desire. And the reason I'm calling that out is, and I think the reason I do it is just to really show that and be a living example of change and pivot and moving with my desire and my intuition. I'm sure I will reach a point where I feel like I've gotten in my rhythm where things stop changing, but I am not in my rhythm, and I'm not afraid or embarrassed of not being in my rhythm. And I'm saying all of that to liberate you and give you permission, not that you need my fucking permission, but I'm going to say it out loud anyways, give you permission to not be in your rhythm. In order to get into your rhythm, you have to find your rhythm. And we expect ourselves to be in our rhythm, so we don't allow ourselves to find our rhythm. Take a shot every time I say rhythm, right? And there is just so much of it. I can feel it coming up a lot. I'm speaking to it a lot about the resistance on Instagram, but there is just, it lacks so much transparency. It lacks so much of the truth about what goes on behind the scenes. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't expect everyone in the world to share how they got to where they are. But what that does when that is left out of this aesthetic, picture perfect presentation of what things look like, when that is left out, when the transparent side is left out, it leaves people feeling like they are doing something wrong, or like they're not good enough, or like they're not doing things correctly. I know that because I'm one of those people. I'm very frequently one of those people. And so I just feel called to share all of these parts of it. I feel called to keep showing the process of finding my rhythm and making it fucking K to not be in your rhythm, because it's a process. And back to living slowly, I don't want to rush into finding that rhythm. I don't want to rush into finding that peace, because that peace and that rhythm, at least my plan right now, is going to be something that supports me for the rest of my life. So why would I want to rush into that? I want this to be my life's work. Why would I rush into that? Why would I make a decision and stick with it even when it no longer feels aligned, when that goes against everything that I want to build? It doesn't make sense when you spell it out like that. So I will continue to change and to pivot and to grow. I'm always going to be a work in progress. I never want to stop growing and changing. And sometimes I wonder if being so open and transparent about that makes me lose credibility, or makes me lose, as I'm saying that out loud, it feels ridiculous to even fucking say, but I wonder that sometimes. And I just keep reminding myself of this call and this desire I have to share, so that we can all feel a little less alone in the process of building our big, beautiful fucking dreams. So I hope you found this episode helpful. If you watched on YouTube, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So we're making it up as we go in my truest form, very on brand for me. I didn't even change out of the clothes that I've been wearing for the last 2 days for this video, because I'm calling myself out on something I said in the vlog form of this video, was that I don't want to start creating content. I don't want to start doing things until I have my whole space set up and done cutely. And when I said that out loud, it reminded me of a question I asked the women on the retreat, and I ask myself often: what is something that you want to do that you're waiting for something else to fall into place for before you actually do? And as I spoke those words out loud, when I was saying that I don't want to start recording content until the office is set up and it's cute and it's beautiful, I felt it coming out of my mouth. I justified why I said it, and then I called myself out on it. And so later on, I think in that vlog, I said that I'm allowing that to be true for the content that I want to post, and not even post, but the content that I want to share as courses, as modules, because those I want to live for a really long time. But when it comes to this podcast, I care a little less about these videos being polished and pretty, because I want this podcast, I want this YouTube to be something that is very raw. I've been saying that the whole time. And so even today, I kind of wanted to maybe record this podcast and record this video today, but I just kept saying, I haven't showered, I haven't changed my hair, I haven't even changed my clothes. And I said this at the beginning of this episode, that I was on my way out of the door, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to record it now. I'm going to do it now. And I am so glad that I did. I'm so glad that I didn't change. I'm so glad that my hair looks exactly the way that it's looked for the last 3 days. I don't care, because I'm moving in a way and in the direction that feels good. I'm doing it in a way that feels aligned. And I know that this process will continue to grow and improve. And I don't want to keep putting things off until something else falls into place, because that something else is not going to fall into place as quickly as I could do the other things that I want to do. I want to allow all these things to kind of happen in sync with one another. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you continue following along. I would love to hear your feedback. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to go walk my dog in downtown Southern Pines to get some food, because I just realized I haven't eaten today yet. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you in the next episode.